Harmonia and I have decided to sit down and talk you through our whole retreat, and we will proceed to do that now and answer all your questions. We received questions from people from my side, from her side on Instagram, and yeah, we'll be sitting down and answering all those questions. First, I will start with a quick introduction of me, who I am and how am I here and holding space for women, and why am I doing this work really. So I spent 14 years in the corporate sector, working in Mauritius, in Dubai, in South Africa, and Maldives, among some other places. And my normal day was a 10 to 14 hour day. Burnout and stress was my normal. It was so normal, I didn't know I was burnt out or stressed. Being numb was also normal. Not having any boundaries, because I was always trying to people please at work, to climb the corporate ladder, and more money, bigger title, more promotions. So this was my reality for 14 years. And then when I turned 31, 32, something like that, I just had enough, and I also couldn't handle what was happening to me. My health was being affected. I had a big tumor in my uterus. I had put on over 10 kilos within 2 years for no reason at all. I was healthy. I was working out, but there was this unexplained weight gain. My hormones were out of whack. And yes, so I just knew I had to make a choice and decide what I want to do with my life. So I was completely dysregulated. I was overwhelmed to the point that I just didn't care anymore about anything. So then the overwhelm was so much that I just had to surrender. And this is what I did. I surrendered. I let go of the job. I let go of the country. I let go of other responsibilities and commitments. I just let go of everything and decided, okay, I just cannot do this anymore. I don't know where this is going. I was making a lot of money, let all that go. And I decided to fly to Canada to be with my sister, because for me, sisterhood is unconditional love, and I was missing that here in Dubai. So I flew to Canada to my sister to have a full reset. So I was in Canada for a few months with my sister in nature. I started hiking, fully immersed in nature, took up yoga. So I didn't do any big change, except just left everything behind that was dysregulating me, really. And what happened is that I lost 12 kilos in 4 weeks, just like that, the easiest weight loss ever, just because my nervous system was regulated again. And yes, and that's actually when I realized how nature actually directly impacts our well-being, regulates our nervous system, and also just, how our emotions are fully connected to our health, our physical health, which is something that was quite alien to me before that, taking emotions into consideration. And this is how I found myself in this work in 2015, when I broke down completely and then lifted myself up and was reborn out as a completely different person in the midst of nature and sisterhood. And yes, this is why I'm doing this work. And this is also why I then approached Harmony. Harmony is my teacher. She's someone I really look up to. She has been my teacher since maybe 2.5 years, something like that. First my teacher, then my mentor, and then I knew about her retreat in the mountains in Spain. And with my thought in mind of how nature has helped me and how community has helped me, being with other women has helped me, I approached Harmony to see if we can work together and hold something together for women. Because other than her retreat, I actually admire Harmony a lot for the way she embodies the feminine. She is unapologetic in the way she expresses her truth. She calls me out of my bullshit all the time. And yes, and I was like, who better than someone who has led me after 10 years of myself being in this work, than someone like you, someone I really respect, someone I really admire, someone who lives in nature, embodies nature, embodies the elements of nature and includes nature in her work. So here we are doing this together. And yeah, I'll pass this over to you, Harmony, if you want to introduce yourself a little bit. And yeah, we'll take it from there.
Wow. How am I going to second that amazing introduction, Bhavna? That was beautiful listening to you. And
Thank you.
already, although I already know some things about your past, just unpacking it like that was just quite powerful. And yeah, let's see where I can start. In terms of introducing myself, my background is very different from yours. I was brought up into a strict but spiritually oriented family, very much rooted in the ancient Indian philosophy. So this was a little bit my background. And at some point, this obviously planted a seed there for me, this kind of connection or this deeper questioning about existence and our inner self. Although I must admit that in my upbringing, there was so much black and white. There was so much around this is right, this is wrong, some very kind of like apparently high morals. And there was something in there inside me which yeah, needed to rebel. There was something in, our innate wisdom that we all have that said, okay, there is a lot of truth in here, but there's also a lot of bullshit. How can I really kind
Yeah.
of begin to differentiate? And I guess that's kind of like where my path started. I went off to study psychology, at the same time, also just letting my hair down and discovering a little bit about who I was away from the family and away from that kind of
Yeah.
very deep indoctrination as well.
Mhm.
And from there, I really discovered that although the psychology had a lot of really interesting um, theories and methods of investigation, there was a lot of things that I had already discovered through some of maybe the ancient scriptures and different, more spiritually oriented or energy oriented approach to personal growth that I found a lot more stimulating and actually a lot deeper.
Yeah.
So as a result of that, I focused really on listening to that inner call. And that inner call was really about who am I and why am I here? And that's what led me to go to India, and I discovered Tantra yoga, which, by the way, is not so much oriented like much of yoga, modern yoga, on like the physical body or the perfection of postures. It's more about energy, states of mind, consciousness, and purifying ourselves in many ways. And so I worked with this, but it wasn't actually until I became a mother that everything changed. And I think that's what's interesting, maybe for me to share a little bit more with you here, is that when I fell pregnant, I was realized that I didn't want to be in the city anymore. That if I was going to bring life into this world, that the best start that I could give to that individual was going to be immersed in nature. So I made an important decision. You talked about surrender and letting go, and my letting go there was also about letting a lot go, which included, um, the security
Yeah.
of the home that I'd
Mm-hmm.
created with my partner, because we decided that he would stay in the city and I would actually go and be immersed in the countryside. So we bought this amazing piece of land, and I spent some very solitary years there as I was bringing up my kids. And I don't think I actually realized when I made that decision that it wasn't actually only for them, but it was for me.
For you.
Yeah,
What
and
changed for you?
that was my retreat, because I had a very, very deep connection with nature there. And especially when you've spent a good part of your life maybe separate or not, if you haven't actually had that depth of communication with nature, if you really open up to learn from her, she shows you everything.
Yes.
So it was just like this complete fascination with life, with nature in all of its forms and its cycles, which made me actually understand a lot more about myself. So I would say that Mother Nature herself was my teacher, and also learning through the eyes of my children was also my teacher.
Yeah.
But maybe I should also mention here that the area where we live is a very powerful place. It's not an area which is usually referenced very much in tourist books or anything like this. It's a mountain range in the center of
Yeah.
Spain. It's on the south side of Avila. So some people maybe know about the Spanish saint, a female saint called Saint Teresa of Avila. So this is on the south side of the mountains. So it's a very warm, protected area. It's like a microclimate. So we have lots of fruit
Yeah.
growing there as well.
I have to say
But
something. I could feel the energy of the place when we would have classes, and sometimes you would be sitting outside with your camera on, and Harmony would be speaking to the camera, speaking to us and teaching, and I would be so fascinated by her surroundings because she would give classes in nature while just sitting there with the wind in her hair and no sound in the background except birds and sometimes nothing. And yes, I'm so excited to be able to experience this soon.
yeah, today I'm not there, but
Yeah.
hopefully in the next time we do a
Oh,
conversation like
yes.
this, I can actually be there so you can
Actually, yes.
see it through the screen. But yes, what I was saying is that there's something very special, and I feel like referencing it now because today, as you know, is Mahashivaratri. It's the night of Shiva, and for me, the mountain is that kind of like inner consciousness, that reference point. And the mountains where we live are pretty high, and they are mainly made of quartz. So
Really?
the
Oh, that's interesting.
yes. So for me, being there and being in this kind of retreat, kind of finding myself there really allowed me to realign, to realign with source, with that fresh spring water, with that information, that cosmic information, which is channeled through any high mountain, and really allowing myself to be immersed by that. So it was the mountain and the land and the nature have been my teacher, and are very much part of what I share. And of course, the land where we, have slowly built our own small retreat center is the fruit of my own practice and of being on that same piece of land for what is now almost 19 years.
Yeah.
So it's sometimes when we're talking about the power of the land, not the same going to one place than another, even though it's in nature, because the land is alive, it has spirit.
Yes.
So somehow I would say for me, it's very comfortable working on the land because the land also knows me, and I can welcome people onto that space, and it can be already a solid, a solid receiving space for this work.
And actually, my next question to you was going to be, since you receive people in that space, can you tell us a little bit about your experience working with women and how that has been for you, working with women at the land and working with women out of the land? Do you see a difference? And just generally, what
Yeah,
happens when you
yeah,
are, what's your experience?
yeah. Thank you so much for getting me back on track because I hadn't anticipated speaking to you like this in these
Yes.
terms. So I haven't really told you that much more about my actual professional experience. But as you've asked, specifically with women, I would say that naturally, as a woman, I have always attracted more female clients. So what I mean by that is, for me, there wasn't initially a choice. I didn't decide to work exclusively with women. It happened. And at the same time, it became very clear that this is a very, very important work to be done. So I feel very connected and honored that the women who have approached me for one-to-one work or for group sessions really kind of value this space and what I can offer to that space. I would say that yeah, I've done one-to-one and group trainings and sessions with women, also regular women's circles at our place. But also, I've traveled and collaborated for several consecutive years in a women's festival in Girona, so in the other side of Spain, in Catalonia, in fact.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and what I will say is that any work that I do with women when it is in nature is accelerated.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I will say by that is we are a manifestation of Mother Earth. Our bodies are the earth in so many ways. And I could unpack that more, but I think that's enough just to reference that for now. So it means that when we actually get this body, this natural body into nature, there is some old, like spontaneous recognition
Yeah.
between when we just kind of align our senses with
Mm-hmm.
with nature. And I come from the ancient tantric philosophy and this lineage. So I'm not so much talking about the modern neo tantra. So in this work, the most fundamental is the work with the elements.
Yeah.
So in our body, we have the elements, and outside, we have the elements.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the most simple and profound practices we can do is actually getting the elements from our body, putting them into nature, and aligning our elements with the macro elements. And
Yes.
already some massive changes are happening
Mm-hmm.
just with that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, I have experienced myself how I feel supported by nature when you're in clear, clean nature, away from the hustle of the city. It's really different. The support and the connection you have, and yes, the healing, and also your frequency. I remember something. Everyone speaks about manifestation. 2015, 2016. I did not really, I never really cared about the word manifestation. But I have to say is when you work in nature, that has been my experience again and again and again. When we work in nature, with nature, your energetic field gets cleansed so deeply and your frequency rises so significantly that you actually manifest so many things. There's one story I could actually mention here briefly. I had gone on a retreat in nature. I was feeling stuck at some other point in my life after this big breakthrough that I had. I was feeling not so comfortable in my body, and like that was a few years after 2015. And I went to nature again, immersed for like 10 days. And while there, I was thinking, what do I want to do now? And just usual questions. And I thought, oh, it would be cool to work in South Africa. That was my one thought. 3 days later, I got a job offer to lead a pharmaceutical company in South Africa, in one of the most beautiful tourist towns in South Africa. It was hardly an interview. I got offered a house, I got offered a car, I had my own jetty on the ocean because the ocean is my big love. And I mean, at that point, you're surprised, but not really. So, this is the kind of manifestation that can happen when you surrender to your practice in nature. At the retreat, this is what we are offering you, ladies. When you come here in full surrender, no expectation, just let yourselves be in our care. and we will take so much care of you. We see our work as sacred. I think I can speak to harmony, for harmony, as well here. We see our work as sacred. The work with, we are sacred beings, women. I mean, we are the portals between the spirit world and the physical world. Our wombs are the portal between the spirit world and the physical world. And we literally are the manifestors and the creators. We create life. So when you allow yourself to fully surrender and you come and do this work in joy, in community, in sisterhood, manifestation happens beyond your wildest dreams. Don't come for the manifestation because you will be boycotting yourself there. Come for your healing and for your alignment. Just come for that. And yes, magic happens. Yeah. And Harmony, to go back to you, what kind of practices do you usually see? Do you like using at your retreats, or do you see us or you bringing forth at the retreat to actually support our theme of rewilding?
Yeah, I have to just take one step back before I answer your question, because what you shared there was just so beautiful and so powerful and so inspiring.
Thank you.
And as I was listening to you, there was one thing that I felt like just emphasizing a little bit more. And that was the fact that we both shared about how being in nature has helped us individually.
Yeah.
And we've both spoken about moments when we've been alone in nature.
Yes.
And as I heard you kind of speaking to the women who will be coming to join us, I just felt like reminding you all that it's not the same stepping into nature by yourself as actually doing this work in a group.
Yes.
So we can say that, of course, we're here to support you and inspire you and guide you and accompany you in any way that is beneficial. But just us being together means that our energy field, which is already going to be vibrating at a bigger frequency, is actually being accompanied by the presence of other women.
Yeah.
So we generate a lot more energy, not only on an emissive level, but we also get to receive and channel and accumulate a lot more energy when we are together, also in circle. So this is something that really excites me, because I know that all the processes are magnified when we come together as a group, which is just, it's just an honor to witness as well. So I'm going to take a breath to that, a brief pause, and I will answer your question.
While you take the pause, I have to say that when I did my retreat in nature alone, it was hard. It was amazing in terms of the healing that happened, but it was hard, and I did miss community. But I didn't know at the time that that was something out there. So yes, just to emphasize on what you said about being in nature and healing in community and just being together. Yeah.
And at the same time, while you say that, for me, there's something very powerful about naming silence. Because I think perhaps nowadays, especially, there are many retreats where there is constant sharing on a verbal level.
Yes.
And I think that although that we are, in that proximity with other women, and in nature, we also need to actually have those spaces for silence and individual connection with nature within a solid and protected container.
Yeah.
So one thing that I will say that in my retreats, even if it's not a full silent retreat, we will always have these spaces of silence, which is for deepening in that self-inquiry, for integrating in silence, but then, of course, having those spaces for sharing, for laughing, for dancing together, and everything else, which is so enlivening and beneficial. And yes, so you were asking about what other kind of tools that we're going to be bringing in our toolkit. So I know that you have some, I have others. As I've done a lot of body work, my first love was dance, and then I still am a teacher trainer of yoga, a very much somatic practice, which I combine with the use of visualization, intention, the breath. Even sometimes we use affirmation or mantra as well. And I work a lot with the breath. In fact, that's the area that we have both found each other on, is the use of breath work for actually going a lot deeper. As a psychologist, I'm really interested in accessing the subconscious mind and really freeing up what stands between us and our deeper intuition, which is quite often moving a lot in terms of blocked energy, but also releasing emotions which are actually clouding our vision quite often. So we'll be walking in the mountains, we'll be doing movement practices, we'll be using the voice, which I feel is a very powerful tool and vehicle, which is inseparable from the breath. The breath and the voice obviously go together. And then we will be doing more still practices with meditation as well. Maybe you'd like to just share with everyone those other tools that you'd like to also bring in.
So I mainly use hypnotherapy, breath work, and dance, and also some embodiment practices, but not yoga. I'm not a yoga teacher. I'm barely flexible, but embodiment work is a big part of my work as well. So at the retreat, I'm planning to actually complement harmonist practices with hypnotherapy and breath work, in the sense that I use both tools to bring women into their bodies very deeply, into an altered state of consciousness, into the bodies, and we work on different wounds that we all carry as women, as human beings. For example, I have clients who want to get pregnant, but they have no medical history that shows why they can't get pregnant. So they end up understanding that it has something to do maybe with the emotion or the emotional world that they live in or something. So they come to me for that. Or I've worked a lot with women post-birth, because birth nowadays, birthing babies, sadly, is not given the sacredness that it requires in hospitals, in the mainstream hospitals. And that leaves a lot of trauma for women in their wombs, in their bodies. There's just fear and there's resentment and there's anger, and that's not what a woman should feel after giving birth. So my clients come to me to release that, and we do that through hypnotherapy, through breath work, so that doesn't show up later on in their lives or when they get pregnant again. I've worked a lot with women on money blocks, actually, and I have a really good story that I will share now. I had a client who had a workshop that she just couldn't sell. So she came to me and she was like, I'm trying everything, and I know her well, and she's amazing. Like, her content is impeccable, brilliant work. But she just couldn't sell the workshop for whatever reason. So she came to me just one day before the workshop that she was going to hold the next day, to ask me to help her, guide her inside and see what's happening in her subconscious. If we can release something, maybe it works, maybe not. So we did work, and I took her into an altered state of consciousness, and her subconscious took her into her childhood. So we worked on things that happened during her childhood, released stuff. It was quite emotional for her. And that same evening, she got 8 bookings for the next day, when this was something she was promoting for the whole month, and she couldn't sell. Nothing was selling. But that evening, whatever she released worked. And the reason for that is because she came in full surrender. She came in trust. She came not having expectations. She just wanted to see, maybe it works, maybe not. Literally, she had no expectations because it was one day before. But it worked. So you see, this works, but you only get as much as you are willing to open up to. Your vulnerability and your softness and your openness is so important for this work, whether with embodiment practices or ecstatic dance or yoga or breath work, hypnotherapy, basically any modality that we use, and that we will bring to the retreat and we will be holding for you, taking you through, will require you to be in surrender and trust in yourself, in us, in nature. It might be a lot to ask, but we truly believe that the people who resonate with us will come into our field for this retreat. So yes, this is basically my work, and how I work with women.
Mm.
And
That's beautiful.
Thank you. And I found a lot of women, specifically, I like to concentrate on womb healing, again, because our womb is where humanity originates from. It is so, so sacred, but the womb and woman are so disrespected, like so disrespected, dismissed, disregarded. And it has become so normal through our lineage, generations and generations before us, that the shame, the guilt, the fear, the mistrust that we feel, the violation is ingrained into our bodies, and mainly in our wombs. That's where we hold it, and in our cervix, and between our pelvic area, and our reproductive sexual organs as well, reproductive organs. And this is the work that I'm the most passionate about, womb healing, which I will bring to the retreat. And this specific work has the most impact in community, because us as women coming together with the intention of just purely healing our womb, this portal for human life wouldn't exist without it. Just with that intention, and just that there is so much healing that happens in community among sisters. And I'm actually really excited to be doing this. And it's the first time I will be doing this purely in nature. I've always done it in more busy places. So yes, so
Well,
this is
I'm very excited to actually witness you transferring this clearly very potent work in towards this natural setting. And listening to you, there's also this element of this inner work manifesting on an outer level.
Yes.
So you're talking about this work that you do with the women, and I'm talking about the external setting, and it's about these two things coming together. It's about not only healing on this kind of deeper, invisible level, but also it really manifesting out into the world. And I think that really doing this in this natural setting is going to help. And the other thing that that I always bring into my work is the rite of passage and the use of ritual and symbolism. So I think it's very important to recognize this, because everything that we're talking about is something that we have the intuition about, our mind can understand, even if we're talking about, as you were talking about, generational traumas or just inherited cultural patterning as well. But this is somehow kind of, we can feel it, we can sense it, we can understand it, and we can, no matter how we can try and say, okay, this is how I want it to be, this is what I would like to manifest as I go into my process of healing. When we actually get to create symbols on the outside which reference that new start, that stepping in to who I now am, in that actual letting go of that old paradigm. And this is when we get to embody it. So the fact that the people who come to do this process, there's, we can even do a photograph of before and afterwards, because sometimes it actually helps to say, I am literally not the same woman that arrived here a week ago.
Yes.
And this is
100%.
when we get to realize that we can actually make quantum leaps. We can actually make massive changes. And it's
Yeah.
actually easier to do that when we leave our familiar surroundings.
Yes.
Because we have so many patterns of habits. And the people who know us well remind us because they also keep us into a mold because every time they receive us, they have a previous
Yeah.
idea around our identity. So sometimes it makes it much harder to make that quantum leap. But when we come out of our familiar surroundings with our deepest intention and drive and desire to shed those layers of our past and shed that pain, conditioning, and everything else, then we find ourselves in nature, and nature does not judge us.
Yeah.
Nature does not see us as the constructed being. Nature recognizes us as itself, as herself,
Yeah.
as essence. So we get to be held literally in a space which allows us to reprogram ourselves.
Yes.
And when we get to then pass this rite of passage and to symbolize this, and the symbol can be different. We are maybe using fire, we may be using water ceremony, we maybe at some point, if it feels right, because we work with small groups, so we get to actually honor what each woman needs. It might even be cutting our hair. You know, we don't know what that symbol for that woman might actually be in order for her to step into that new free identity that she is now embracing. So
Yeah.
this is about really empowering each woman and inviting them to be the
Yeah.
queen that they are.
Yeah. And I'd like to add to that. I was going to speak about this later, but I feel now is the right moment. One of the shifts that you will experience, this before and after photograph that Harmony just mentioned, is aliveness. You will feel alive afterwards. Alive like you probably, some of you might have never felt before, because aliveness is not something that's encouraged in our society. It's seen as really dangerous and it's quite taboo and it's really penalized because people don't know. Most people don't know. We don't know. We haven't been taught on how to deal with someone who is fully alive. And fully alive doesn't mean just being joyful and happy and manifesting. That's a result of being alive. Being alive actually means feeling your emotions, making space for your emotions, and processing them, respecting yourself enough to set boundaries and saying no and to your loved ones even. So being alive is encompassing all that, and this is what you will learn and what you will experience at the retreat. This what is aliveness, and you will integrate that deep within you. You will become so in tune with your shadow parts and your triggers that you will be able to set your boundary when you need it to self-regulate, for example, in your daily life. It's loving yourself enough to just let go of everything if you need a break. If to let go of people who don't respect you, for example. So all this is encompassing aliveness, and aliveness also means using our voice. And using our voice for women is a big thing. A lot of us, most of us, and that's something I really admire in Harmony. When she's using her voice, she's using her voice with grace, not with defensiveness. And that takes practice, and not in anger. That takes practice. I mean, I'm talking about the mentor, teacher's friend side of you, that I have experienced. And you speak your truth with grace and you use your voice. And that's what's empowering. And this is what you will learn at the retreat, using your voice in nature, as Harmony mentioned. And that also will touch on shame and guilt that we would like to bring into the work that we will do with you, because these are two feelings that are not really spoken about. So we'll go there, we'll bring them up, we'll feel them, we'll process them, and we'll see what that looks like if you live
Mm.
without the shame and without the guilt of being a woman and an alive woman. Yeah.
It's actually just very empowering just to listen to you speak. And yeah, it's very inspiring. And I just like to add to that that, you know, I find that many women are afraid of their own power. And one of the major things is actually embracing that power because yes, you talk about grace and not expressing anger, but also that anger and that raw power, which is not always pretty, is a part of who we are as women.
Yeah.
So it's about harnessing that. In fact, one of my teachers says, and I reference this a lot because I love it. He says that anger is actually, it's not something bad.
Mm-mm.
Anger, it's how you use it.
Yeah.
So anger can be used for destruction or it can be used for correction. And I love that because it means that if we get to feel that power of the energy and the emotion in our bodies, and instead of suppressing it and hiding it away or swallowing it, we actually harness it. And this is something that we can all learn to do. And then we can actually use that energy, which is enormous potential, and move it towards whatever action is going to bring us towards that honorable place, which is where our wisdom and our integrity will essentially direct that energy. Because I do believe in the wisdom of women and the wisdom of the feminine. And when I say that, I mean the feminine qualities which are also in men.
Yes.
And I think we have to enhance that feminine energy, both in women and in men. But quite often it begins with women actually having the confidence to actually show the world that what makes them feminine is not weakness, it is power.
Yes.
And that this power is something that can inspire other people to really take actions which are coming from that strength, but they also have that sensitivity, that compassion, that nurturing quality. Because a woman will always fight with everything that she's got to save lives, because she is the nurturer. And quite often in our modern society, what we're seeing is quite the opposite, because maybe some other qualities which are not beneficial, which are more related to destruction quite often, or power, are actually prevailing instead of these qualities of nurturing and sustaining life. So I think we need this not only on a personal level, but also on a global level.
Yes, and for us to become in touch with our feminine essence and rebalance the feminine within us, men and women, we also need to address something we were talking about earlier, about how do women lose touch with their wild, authentic essence in today's world. And also we briefly spoke about the archetypes that you are teaching about in relation to that, how to bring back and rebalance the feminine within all of us through the archetypes. Would you like to speak a bit about that? Mainly Matangi?
Yes, I mean, I'll be very brief around that because this is unpacking something which is enormous.
Our archetype for the retreat.
Yes, but what we can say is, as human beings, but specifically as women, we see that we have so many sides of our personality. You know, sometimes we can be docile, sometimes we can be furious and powerful, sometimes we can, you know, there's so many different aspects to us. And one of the things that we have done as women on a more of a collective level is that we've learned that some of those qualities are acceptable in society, and others are not. And that's where you've mentioned the idea of suppression, shame, etc. So if we can begin to recognize that each one of these aspects of ourselves is actually sacred, the different female archetypes can help us. So we can say, okay, when I'm recognizing this aspect of myself coming to the forefront, it's actually this archetype, it's this goddess. So I can actually embody each one of the goddesses at a certain moment and say, oh, I can be empowered in this space. So specifically for this retreat, we're going to be working with Matangi. And Matangi is a fascinating goddess because she's very much related to the arts. So we can talk about music and poetry and painting. But unlike the figure which is more well known, which is Saraswati, the difference is that Matangi is this raw artistic expression. So rather than being the goddess of refined arts, which means that, we have to acquire that through discipline and practice, Matangi is that raw, spontaneous, authentic expression. She is the artist who will just, throw a paint against a wall and to express herself. And that is art. She is the one who lives in exile, quite often away from society, because she is willing to stand apart and express her voice no matter what anyone else thinks of her. And at the same time, is deeply respected and honored for that. So this is a very interesting aspect. And she's also very much related to the plant world. She dwells in the forest. She knows all of the herbs and the plants, what their properties are. She can speak to that realm of nature. And so it's the perfect archetype for us to explore our own raw creativity and to establish that deeper communication with the nature around us. I'm really excited about sharing some of the techniques that we can use to actually synchronize and be inspired by her. So she will be our muse during the days of the retreat.
And I had a question from a couple of ladies actually about who this retreat is for, because as you've heard, it's a broad, deep subject. The retreat itself is deep. There's so much depth in it. So people are asking, who is the retreat for? And I'm sure Harmony has a lot to say about that as well. And from my side, I'd just like to say it's really for the everyday woman in the corporate world. I live in Dubai, who have numbed out, and we are not asking you to live your real life and go in the forest and just be happy forever and heal. And no, that's not what we are asking. What we are saying is to remember, to reclaim and redefine femininity for you in this corporate world, this male-dominated workplace and society, really. So this is one of the women, who the retreat would be for. If you're fully immersed in your corporate world, you're really busy, you're always in your business suits. My old life, old me, this would be great for me right now. If the old me, for example, who had no clue, didn't have a community like this of sisterhood, of healing, of just support and fun and gentleness. And I didn't have that then, and I wish I did. And this is what we're offering. This is to the corporate woman. And also for the women, and all of us, most of us have been through this, we find ourselves attracting the same kind of partners in relationships again and again and again and again. And where you are disrespected, where you're unseen, you're numb, you have no connection to your partner. It might have started off well, and then it turns out that, well, you go back to the same pattern, and that's because you have a pattern that is a blind spot, and because it's your blind spot, you can't see it. So part of the work that I do with breath work and hypnotherapy, I take you into the mother or father wound. um, we will see at the retreat which one works best for the group. And there you start becoming aware of your blind spots. We work on the wounds that you developed in childhood or even through your lineage, and you become aware of your blind spots, and we rewire the way you see your self-worth, for example. We rewrite your old stories. And that's when you will start seeing the change in real life, in your relationships. So really the retreat is for just every single one of us who are feeling a bit lost or numbed out, mainly numbed out, because we are sometimes so often numbed out, we think it's normal. It's not normal. You're supposed to feel pleasure every day in the little things in life. Your senses are supposed to be alive. And it's really hard to find that in the city. So this is who the retreat is for. And I mean, I can go on and on, but it's really for the everyday woman who is interested in reconnecting to herself. And Harmony, if you have something you would like to add to that?
Yeah, the only thing that I would like to add to this is the fact that what could concern some of the women is, okay, so I have this like complete, powerful, transformative journey.
Yes.
What's going to happen after that? How can I possibly go back to my old life? And that's something that I feel very strongly about is integration, because sometimes I've seen this in other clients who maybe come and they've had a transformative experience, but then it's just left them kind of like, okay, now what? Where am
Lost.
I?
Yeah.
And you mentioned people who are in relationships, because that's when it can be tricky. It's like, I've done all this work on myself, and I go back and how can I even articulate this?
Yeah.
So one thing that I do feel like saying to the women is that we want to accompany you during this process, but we also want to make sure that you integrate well afterwards, which is why we have really included this opportunity of continuing the work afterwards as well, and having that support as a small community that we established in those days, but also with Bhavna, with myself, so that you can really, feel that you can bring this into the world, into your relationship, into your workplace, because we don't want everyone to be dropping their corporate jobs.
Yeah.
We need women
or their partners.
like you.
Yeah.
Yes, and we exactly.
Yeah.
We need women, conscious, powerful women in the workforce as well, because this is where a lot of the changes that we need in the world can actually happen. So this is why we feel that this is a deeply, deeply nutritious space. And for us, it's an honor to be able to share our tools and accompany you as we do this together. We get to do this beautiful work together.